My name is Mark, and I'm the author of Quest 52. And I want to thank you for joining us on this year-long pursuit of Jesus. I can think of nothing more valuable, more important to give your time and attention to. So let's begin with this question from lesson number 1. Is Jesus God? We begin our quest in the beginning. That's where every quest starts. John 1:1 says this, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and everything that was created through Him." The question is, who is God? And according to verse 18 of that same chapter, this is John's introduction, and as he brings the introduction to a close, he says in verse 18, "No one has ever seen God. The only God who is at the Father's side has made him known." The claim that John is making is that only Jesus can truly reveal to you the nature of God. Now, there's some things about God we know through nature. For example, we know that God is powerful. So the technical term, his omnipotence, you could get from creation. Another attribute of God is omnipresence, that he's everywhere. You could get that from nature. Third attribute of God in classical terms is omniscient, that God knows everything. That would be harder to discern merely from nature, but you go back into the Old Testament, you see the prophecies of God, and you see the nature of God and the knowledge of God. Omniscience, omnipresence, omnipotence. That's classic God. Important, yes. Inspiring, perhaps not. At least if you want to have a personal relationship with this God. Omnipotence, omnipresence, omniscience, that's out there kind of stuff. That's imposing kind of stuff. But I want to propose that the most important things that you and I know about God, we know about God because we know his Son, Jesus Christ. And John points out 3 of those things right here in the introduction to his gospel. Number 1, God is near. No other religion says that. Oh, sure, there's some religions that say that God is near if he's impersonal, if he's a rock or a tree or a river. But at the moment that a religion personalizes God, let's say you give him a name, Allah or Yahweh, that God is pushed to the outer borders of the universe. He is far above, far beyond, not personally knowable. It is only Christianity that makes God both personal and near. And only through Jesus is he knowable. So God is near. The second attribute of God that you find only through Jesus Christ is that God is love. Now, I am not saying that other gods don't love their own people. They do. I'm not saying that other gods don't love people who sacrifice to them. They do. But only in Christianity do we find God loving all people equally, the righteous and the unrighteous. Only in the Christian God and only through Jesus do you hear these words, love your enemies. And that's precisely what Jesus did on the cross. His very first words, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. That's the kind of God that I need. Because I have been far from God. I have been an enemy of God. That's what Paul says in Romans 5:8. While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. That's a kind of God that is inspiring and transformative. And that leads to a third attribute of the God we know only through Jesus, that God suffers. There's actually a debate in religious theory, not just Christianity, but religions, period, whether God could suffer and still be God. Christianity never enters the debate because it's so transparent that Jesus, our God, suffered for us. That's why I think Jesus is worth pursuing in this year-long, 15-minute-a-day quest, because no other God is like him. And you cannot know the true nature of the living God without his Son, Jesus Christ, because no one did and no one could have guessed that God is near, that he loves his enemies, and that he would suffer even for those who reject him. But what's really powerful about this concept, we call it the incarnation. That word is never used in the Bible, but it's certainly expressed in texts like verse 14. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And we have seen his glory, glory as of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. That is powerful as a religious idea that God came to us, which makes perfect sense because honestly, there's no way we're getting to him. So without the incarnation, how would we ever come to know God? But it's powerful not just as a religious concept. It's powerful as a human concept. You see, Jesus didn't just show us the nature of God. He showed us in the incarnation how to truly be human. If you want to be a good parent, what does it require? That you are near, that you love, even when they're your enemies. And let's be honest, sometimes kids are. And that we suffer for them. Those are concepts that make a great parent. The concepts that make a great pastor, that make a great teacher, that make a great CEO. Jesus is showing us not just how to know God. He's showing us how to know ourselves and to be truly human. So we begin this quest not asking, is Jesus God? But is God Jesus?